All right, so have you ever heard of a city like so rich and powerful that its walls were built right out of the sea?
Tyre.
Tyre. You got it.
Yeah.
Not Atlantis.
Nope. A real place.
A real place.
With a story just as incredible, though.
Just as crazy. Right. And that's what we're diving into today.
Tyre's history. Yeah. It's fascinating.
This place controlled the most sought-after, luxury in the ancient world.
Really does blend reality and myth in a way that I think we're still, grappling with.
Yeah?
I mean, we're talking about a city that really shaped, the entire ancient Mediterranean through its trade, its craftsmanship, even its religious practices, really.
Yeah, and we've got a lot to go on, too.
Yeah.
We've got interviews with historians. We got new archaeological discoveries. We're even looking at accounts from the Old Testament.
Right. I mean, you don't get much better than that.
No. And we're going to cover it all, from the very beginning, the legends of its founding,
Chaps.
all the way to its conquest by Alexander the Great.
Can't forget Alexander.
No, what I think is so interesting is Tyre's story. It really connects with, us even today, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these guys were the pioneers of globalization.
Right.
I mean, they were navigating international trade and cultural exchange centuries before our modern world.
Centuries, yeah. So let's get started.
Okay.
The beginning with the myths and origins.
Right.
So the founding story of Tyre is right out of a movie. We've got a dog, a seashell, and the birth of their most famous product.
Tyrian purple.
Tyrian purple.
Yeah.
The dye.
That's the one.
The legend says,
Well, the god Melkart.
Uh-huh.
He was walking along the beach with his friend Tyra. She had her dog with her, and the dog's biting on a Murex sea snail. Playful, And it gets this super vibrant purple fluid all over its mouth.
Oh, wow.
And Tyrus is oh, that color. I need a dress in that shade.
Oh, that's it. Industry is born. What a story. What an origin story for a fashion icon, right?
Right.
But this wasn't just about,
Looking good.
Right.
No. This was a big...
What was the significance of this purple dye?
Okay, imagine a color so rare, so expensive,
Yeah.
that it's only for emperors and kings.
Wow.
That's Tyrian purple. It wasn't just a dye. It was a symbol of power, wealth, divinity. And, of course, they kept the production a secret.
Of course.
Added to the mystique.
Yeah. It's mind-boggling how a little sea snail could make something so
Demand.
sought after.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Tyre's location, did it play into all of this?
Oh, huge. Without a doubt. So picture modern-day Lebanon on the coast. They're right there. Tyre is.
Okay.
They had the best of both worlds, honestly. Access to the cedar forests in the mountains, perfect for shipbuilding, and the open sea for, trade routes across the whole Mediterranean. I mean,
Yeah.
It's this position that let them become the powerhouse they were.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, okay, King Hiram.
All right, you want to talk Hiram?
Yeah, let's talk about him. And this is where the Old Testament comes in.
Exactly.
So King Hiram, he had a pretty close relationship with
Solomon.
King Solomon, right. And they actually teamed up, I hear, for a pretty big construction project.
King Solomon's temple.
The temple.
That's right. Hiram supplied all the skilled craftsmen, all that cedar wood from Tyre's forests.
Right.
And they built that legendary temple in Jerusalem. And it's not just a business deal.
Right.
It shows how powerful Tyre was.
Right.
I mean, the influence they had, regional, spiritual level.
Wow, that's so interesting. So they were the ancient world's
Contractors.
yeah.
Yeah.
For the super high-end stuff.
Well, sure.
What other big projects were they a part of? Makes you wonder. But, okay, let's move on from cedar wood and temples.
Yeah, let's broaden it out a bit.
Because Tyre was known for way more than just that. Right?
Way more. The Tyrians were master shipbuilders, master navigators.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
The best.
Think of them like the Silicon Valley of their time, constantly innovating, pushing the boundaries, of what was possible at sea. Their ships were all over the Mediterranean, establishing trade routes, connecting cultures.
It's like they were
weaving a network.
Weaving a network, yeah. Across the ancient world, imagine setting sail from Tyre, into uncharted waters, exploring new lands, meeting new civilizations.
Incredible.
What I think is interesting, though, is, other empires, they got their power through conquest, right?
Yeah. Typically, yeah.
But not Tyre.
No.
Tyre was different.
Tyre's power was trade. They weren't building an empire through brute force.
Right.
It was an empire of goods.
Yeah.
Ideas. connections.
Like, think about it. If you've ever been to a coastal city on the Mediterranean,
Chances are
it has some Phoenician roots.
Exactly. And maybe even Tyrian roots.
Yeah, that's the legacy, right?
It is. I mean, their maritime network, it wasn't just moving products around. It was spreading ideas, technologies, culture. And, we can't forget that purple dye.
Oh, right.
Super lucrative. They practically, farmed those Murex snails to extinction to keep up with demand.
Wow. Talk about a
high-demand market.
High-demand market, yeah. But this wasn't like, some little shop on the side, right?
No way.
This dye industry, it really impacted their society.
It was a huge impact.
Yeah.
Economically, socially. I mean, producing Tyrian purple was complex. You needed a specialized workforce, strict control over the supply chain. All this wealth they were generating, it created a powerful elite, and that shapes their whole society.
Yeah, it's interesting, like comparing it to today.
How so?
We still have this desire for luxury goods,
We do. Always have, probably always will.
That drives global trade even today.
Think about it. Diamonds, designer clothes, even rare collectibles.
Yeah.
They all have this mystique, like the Tyrian purple, a value that goes beyond just what they are.
Exactly. So Tyre was this bustling hub.
Total hub. Trade, crafts, innovation.
But I mean, other empires noticed. Oh. They wanted in on the action.
Everyone wanted a piece of Tyre.
Whoa.
Assyrians, Babylonians, they all put the pressure on.
But Tyre managed to stay independent, right?
For a surprisingly long time. That island location, that helped.
Oh, the natural fortress.
Right. Plus, they were skilled diplomats.
Right.
They knew how to negotiate, often avoided war altogether.
Wow, they were
survivors.
Survivors, yeah. But then comes their biggest challenge.
Uh-oh. Who are we talking about?
The guy who was obsessed with conquering them.
Let me guess.
He wouldn't let a little island city stand in his way.
Had to be Alexander the Great.
Alexander the Great.
I mean, Alexander's fixation on Tyre, it's a big deal. It really changed their history. He saw them as a threat.
A threat.
Yeah. Their location, their fleet, they could have messed up his whole plan to conquer Persia.
So when he gets to Tyre...
It doesn't go well.
Why not? What made him so obsessed with taking this,
impregnable city? A few things. Their location, like we said, super strategic. And their navy.
Right.
A powerful navy that could mess with his supplies, Yeah. But I also think it was personal, a little bit. Tyre defying him. It was a challenge to his authority, to his vision of this big, unified empire.
So more than just military strategy.
Oh, for sure. Ego was involved. He had to prove he was in charge.
Right, yeah. So what happens when his first attempt to get the Tyrians to surrender doesn't work?
Well, they tried to play it smart. They offered him gifts, even welcomed him into the city.
Oh, wow.
But then he wanted to make a sacrifice in their temple.
Which temple?
The Temple of Melkart, their main god.
Yeah.
They said no,
Oh,
which was smart, honestly. Letting him into their holiest temple, that would have been like saying he was their king.
That's a good point. They knew it would be like surrendering, basically.
Exactly.
So how does Alexander take this rejection?
Not well.
Uh-oh.
Furious. He starts a siege that lasts 7 months.
7 months? That's longer than some wars these days.
Yeah.
Why so long? What made Tyre so hard to conquer?
It's an island. Alexander's army, they're a land force.
Right.
They couldn't just storm the walls.
Yeah.
He needed a new plan, something bold, something no one had ever done before.
So how do you conquer an island city when you don't have a navy?
You build a land bridge.
No way.
Crazy right. He had his troops demolish the old city of Tyre on the mainland.
The old one.
Yeah. And they used the rubble to build this massive causeway right across the water.
They used the remains of the old city to conquer the new one.
I know. Bold move.
That's wild.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it wasn't just piling up rocks, right?
Oh, no. This was intense. The Tyrians fought back hard. They sent fire ships trying to burn the causeway down, stop the construction.
So it was like a constant battle.
Yeah, of engineering and...
strategy.
Yeah, like a real clash of the titans.
Absolutely. Alexander's men had to build walls, siege towers, all while under attack. Wow. This sounds like a movie. So what changed things? How did Alexander finally break through?
He got a fleet.
Oh, okay.
From his Greek allies. It let him blockade Tyre's harbor.
Oh, so no more supplies or reinforcements.
Exactly. That was the game changer.
Wow. So after months of this back and forth, Alexander finally gains the upper hand.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine the Tyrians just gave up.
Oh, well, they fought to the end. The final assault was brutal, bloody.
I bet.
I mean, causeways done, cities blockaded, Alexander's troops stormed the walls, hand-to-hand combat. It was a massacre.
Oh, wow. What happened to the city, to the people, after all that?
Tyre suffered a brutal fate. Thousands killed, thousands more sold into slavery. It really marked a turning point in their history, like a reminder, of how destructive ambition can be, how fragile even the most powerful empires are.
It's true. It makes you think about, the cost of war, the human cost. But even in defeat, it sounds like Tyre's story doesn't completely end there.
Right. You're right, there's more to it.
Did anything survive?
Yeah.
Like, of their identity?
I think so, yeah. You see, even with Alexander's victory hanging over them, the spirit of Tyre, it didn't disappear.
Okay.
They were resilient, these people. They held on to their culture, their heritage. They kept doing what they were known for, like shipbuilding.
Right.
The purple dye, too. These skills, they passed them down generation after generation. It was a connection to their Phoenician roots, a symbol, I think, of defiance against anyone who wanted to erase their culture.
Wow, that's powerful. It shows how strong, cultural identity can be. That even when you're conquered, your traditions can survive.
It's pretty amazing.
It is. So, okay, what about that Temple of Melkart?
Oh, the one at the heart of the conflict with Alexander.
Yeah. What happened to it? Did it survive the attack?
There's some good evidence that suggests it, or at least a later version of it, was still around in the Roman period.
Really?
Yeah. They found something in Tyre, a Roman-era temple, might be linked to Melkart.
Wow. So even when the city was under Roman control, those old Phoenician traditions...
They were still there.
They were still there. That's fascinating. What can you tell me about this Roman-era temple? How do we know it's connected to Melkart?
Okay, so they found this empty tomb underground, right beneath the foundation.
Okay.
And it connects to this ritual, this myth, called the Ajacis of Melkart.
The Ajacis of Melkart. I've never heard of that.
Most people haven't.
What was it? Why is the tomb so important?
Okay, picture this. A huge festival every year in Tyre.
All right, I'm picturing it.
This ritual, it was a whole performance. It symbolized the death and resurrection of Melkart.
Whoa, really?
Oh, yeah. Like an allegory for the seasons changing, nature renewing itself. It was at the core of their beliefs, a way to connect with nature, understand the cycle of life and death.
So every year, Melkart would die, be buried for a bit.
Symbolically,
and then come back to life in this big celebration.
You got it.
That's a really cool concept. You see it in other religions too, right?
You do.
So you're saying this empty tomb under the Roman temple
might have been a part of this ritual drama.
Wow. That's a big clue. Shows how these old religions, they changed over time, but they kept some core beliefs.
Exactly. They adapted, blended with other cultures.
But kept their essence.
Yeah.
So after Alexander's conquest, did Tyre ever really bounce back? Did it become powerful again?
Alexander's siege, it was devastating, but it wasn't the end for Tyre, that causeway he built.
The one from the rubble.
Yeah. It was a symbol of his victory, sure, but it also changed Tyre forever. It wasn't an island anymore.
Oh, right.
And that changed everything. Its defenses, its trade, even how the people saw themselves.
Wow. This city, once defined by being isolated.
Now it's connected to the mainland.
Yeah. What happened to their navy, the one Alexander destroyed?
They lost a lot of power at sea. They weren't the top dog in the Mediterranean anymore.
I see.
They still built ships, still traded, but their role had changed.
They were part of a bigger system now.
Yeah, one controlled by Rome.
Right. So it's like a cycle, right?
What do you mean?
Tyre, they rise up, become powerful, then they fall.
But can they adapt?
Yeah.
They come back in a different way. They were resilient.
That's really interesting. So under Roman rule,
yeah,
what happens to Tyre? Does it just become like any other Roman city?
Well, the Romans took over in the 1st century BC.
Okay.
And they were practical. They knew Tyre was valuable.
Right. Strategically and for trade.
Exactly. So they rebuilt it big time. Huge hippodrome for chariot races, amphitheater for gladiators, even fancy aqueducts for fresh water.
Wow. So life went on, even under Rome.
Oh, yeah. New rulers, new buildings, but life went on.
So did all this Roman stuff, did it wipe out the Phoenician culture?
It's interesting. Tyre became part of the Roman province of Syria. So Roman law, Roman administration, that had a big impact.
Right.
But like we saw with the Melkart worship, some Phoenician things remained. They were visible, they were vibrant.
So it was like a mix.
A blend.
Of culture.
Roman and Phoenician.
What would it have been like walking the streets of Tyre back then?
Okay, imagine a marketplace. crowded with merchants from all over the Roman world.
Oh, wow.
You'd hear Latin, Greek, Aramaic, people bartering for goods from as far away as India and China. You'd see grand Roman buildings next to traditional Phoenician houses and workshops. And the religions. All kinds of beliefs and practices. Tyre was a crossroads. Always had been.
Yeah. It sounds like Tyre reflected the whole Roman Empire in a way. All these different cultures all coming together.
That's a good way to put it. A microcosm, a melting pot.
So what was Tyre's role in this Roman world? Was it just another city, or was it still important?
It was still a vital port, big center for trade, especially luxury goods.
Like their purple dye.
Of course. But also glass, textiles. And the Romans, they needed Tyre's expertise for their own trade routes.
The shipbuilding, the navigating.
All of it.
Wow. Yeah. It's amazing how Tyre held on to that reputation for so long, even after centuries of change, conquest.
Resilient, right.
They were. So what about the Israelites? That connection was so important in their early days. Did that last into the Roman period?
You know, it's funny you should ask that because Tyre is actually mentioned in the New Testament
Really?
a few times. It's said that Jesus himself visited the area around Tyre and Sidon.
No way.
And the Apostle Paul, he stopped in Tyre on one of his missionary journeys.
Wow. So even in the early days of Christianity, Tyre was still on the map.
It's fascinating, how all these different parts of history, they connect and overlap.
It really is.
But as the Roman Empire starts to, have its own problems.
Yeah, what happens then?
What happens to Tyre?
When Rome weakens, the whole empire feels it, Tyre included. It became a target. For what?
Raids, invasions.
Oh, right, because when the central power declines.
The edges become vulnerable.
Exactly.
And in the 7th century AD, Tyre was conquered.
By who?
The Rashidun Caliphate.
Oh, wow.
End of the Roman period for Tyre.
The start of a new chapter. It's amazing to think, this city, founded in the 3rd millennium BC.
A long time ago.
A long time ago. It saw empires rise and fall.
And yet.
It was still a center of trade and culture over 2,000 years later.
That's Tyre. They were resilient. They adapted.
Yeah, they were. Their story is a testament to that,
Human resilience, absolutely. And adaptability.
Conquered, destroyed, rebuilt so many times.
But they always kept their identity.
Yeah, they did. That's what makes their story so fascinating. So inspiring,
It really is. And it teaches us so much about ourselves, about cultural exchange, about human ingenuity.
And about the ups and downs of power.
The cycles of history.
Exactly. It's crazy how much history Tyre has seen.
I know.
They were there for so many big events.
It's true.
Okay, so where were we?
We were talking about Tyre under Roman rule, weren't we?
Right, yeah. So, Tyre becomes part of the Roman Empire.
It does.
But did they ever regain their, former glory, as a major player in the Mediterranean?
Yeah. It's tough to say, really. I mean, Alexander's siege, it definitely weakened them.
Right.
But remember that causeway?
The one he built.
Yeah, the one that connected Tyre to the mainland. It changed everything, really.
How so?
Well, for one, it made them more vulnerable to attack from the land.
Oh, right, because they weren't an island anymore?
Exactly. But it also made trade and communication easier.
So, a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I think so.
What about their navy? Did they manage to rebuild it after Alexander pretty much destroyed it?
They did try to rebuild, but they never fully recovered their naval dominance.
Ah, I see.
They were operating under a whole new system now, the Roman system.
Right. So Tyre's story, in a way, it reflects the whole, rise and fall of power.
That really does.
They rise up, they become powerful, they get knocked down.
But they adapt.
They adapt.
Yeah.
So under Roman rule, what was life like in Tyre?
Well, the Romans were pretty good at, incorporating different cultures into their empire. They saw the value in keeping Tyre as a thriving city.
Makes sense.
So they built all these impressive public structures, a huge hippodrome for chariot races.
Whoa.
An amphitheater for gladiator contests, even a whole system of aqueducts to bring in fresh water.
So life went on.
Oh, yeah, it did.
Even with all the changes. But did any of their, Phoenician heritage survive?
It's fascinating, actually. You see this mix of Roman and Phoenician influences.
Really?
Roman law and administration, they definitely had an impact, but things like the worship of Melkart.
Right, their main god.
Exactly. That persisted. They found evidence of it.
It's almost like they blended the two cultures together, right?
Yeah, like a cultural fusion. If you could walk the streets of Tyre back then,
Yeah.
it would have been amazing. Imagine a bustling marketplace, merchants from all over the Roman world speaking Latin, Greek, Aramaic. You could buy goods from India, China, the architecture, a mix of Roman grandeur and traditional Phoenician styles, and the religions. It would have been such a diverse and vibrant place.
So Tyre was like a microcosm of the Roman Empire itself.
I think so. A melting pot of cultures and ideas.
What was their role in this wider Roman world?
They remained a vital port city.
Okay.
They were still known for their trade, especially in luxury items like purple dye, glass, textiles. The Romans really valued their shipbuilding skills, too. They needed Tyre's expertise to maintain their own vast trade networks.
It's incredible how Tyre managed to hold on to those skills for so long. What about their relationship with the Israelites? Did that continue into the Roman period?
That's an interesting question. You know, Tyre is actually mentioned several times in the New Testament.
Really?
It's said that Jesus himself visited the region around Tyre and Sidon, and the Apostle Paul even stopped in Tyre during one of his missionary journeys.
Wow. So Tyre was still a significant place, even in the early Christian world. It's amazing how all these historical threads connect. But what happens when the Roman Empire starts to decline? How did that affect Tyre?
Well, as the Roman Empire weakened, Tyre became more vulnerable.
Vulnerable to what?
To raids and invasions from outside forces. It's a pattern you see throughout history.
Right, when the central power weakens, the outer regions become targets.
Exactly. And eventually, in the 7th century AD, Tyre was conquered by the Rashidun Caliphate.
Oh, wow.
That marked the end of their Roman period and the beginning of a new era for the city.
It's incredible to think about Tyre's journey through time.
I know, right?
A city that witnessed the rise and fall of so many empires.
And yet it's still there today.
It's a testament to human resilience and the enduring spirit of a city.
Absolutely. Tyre's story reminds us that even in the face of immense challenges, cities and cultures can adapt and find ways to survive.
So we've gone through a lot, right?
We have.
Tyre's whole story.
Pretty much. From the myths to the conquests to the Romans.
Yeah. But what about, like, their impact, their lasting impact? Yeah. What about Tyre's can we still see in the world today?
Tyre's legacy? Oh, man, it's complicated. It's innovation. It's trade. It's that resilience we talked about. It's cultural exchange. I mean, their power faded for sure, but their influence.
It's still around.
I think so, yeah.
So it's more than just, like, old ruins and stories.
Oh, yeah. Much more. Think about their shipbuilding, for example, and navigation.
Okay, yeah.
They were pioneers. That had a massive impact on how maritime trade and exploration developed.
Right, right. They connected the world, basically.
They did. They paved the way for the global society we have today, you know?
It's wild to think about that. Like, those ancient Kyrian shipbuilders.
Their knowledge.
Their knowledge, yeah.
It's still connected to us.
That's incredible. What was it about their shipbuilding that was so, like, revolutionary?
Well, their designs, the way they navigated,
Yeah.
understanding wind currents, they were centuries ahead. They weren't afraid to sail beyond what they could see. And that opened up so much. New trade routes, new knowledge about the world.
Yeah, it really expanded, like, what people knew back then. And we can't forget, obviously, about the purple dye.
The purple.
That was a huge deal. Like, they kind of set the standard for luxury goods, right?
They did. I mean, think about it. They built these complex trade networks that stretched so far, all for this one product.
Because people wanted it.
Exactly. It wasn't just a color. It was a status symbol. Wealth, power. It's interesting, though, when you think about it.
What?
This desire for luxury, how it shaped history, you know?
In what way?
It pushed people to explore new places, to invent new technologies, to create these huge global systems of trade. Tyre's a perfect example of that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So Tyre's, they were all about trade, all about connecting with other cultures, right?
They were.
But they also got caught in the middle of, empires and politics.
That's the flip side, I guess. They thrived on globalization, but it also came with risks.
Yeah, that makes sense. They were good at adapting, but they couldn't escape conflict forever.
Nobody can. And that's a lesson for us, too, I think. Globalization, it's amazing it connects us, but
it's got to be managed carefully.
Yeah, we see that today, right? Trade imbalances, climate change, nationalism.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like, how do we get the good stuff without the bad stuff? It's a tough question.
It is. Entire story, it's like a case study almost. It's a cautionary tale. We got to be careful.
Yeah, we got to learn from the past.
Yeah.
So besides all that, how else has Tyre, left its mark?
Culturally, oh, huge impact. Tyre's story has fascinated people for centuries.
Like even back then?
Oh, yeah. It's in the Bible. It's in the writings of Herodotus, Virgil.
Wow. So they were like a source of inspiration even back then.
For sure. They popped up in myths, in legends, in poetry.
They really captured people's imaginations.
They did, and they still do.
Yeah. It's a story about ingenuity, about the sea, about all the amazing and challenging things that happen when cultures meet.
It's got it all.
So we're wrapping up our deep dive into Tyre.
Huh.
I know, right? Time flies. But I gotta say, I feel like kind of in awe of this city. And a little sad, too,
Yeah.
It's a story of ambition, innovation, resilience.
Absolutely.
But also of loss. And how power, it always shifts.
It does. Tyre's rise and fall, it reminds us that even the biggest, strongest empires, they don't last forever.
Nothing does. But even so, their story lives on.
It does.
And it teaches us a lot.
It does. So, listener, last thought for you. Imagine you could go back in time. Visit Tyre in its prime. What would you want to see? Who would you want to talk to?
And what would you bring back to today?
It's something to think about. Tyre's story makes us consider where we fit in the grand scheme of things. How what we do today might affect the world tomorrow.
Yeah, like centuries from now, someone might be looking back at us, trying to figure out who we were.
It's kind of humbling, right?
It is. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Tyre.
It was fun.
It was. Be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into history. And until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep learning.